Moving further, when we talk about this, the other sources. One was, this is the whole thing what we have discussed is nothing but the part of British legacy, right? But exactly where we have started the journey, when there was a demand for making the constitution. So here, when we talk about the another factor out of WH and WH, then when there was a demand, so demand basically started post 1885. Now in history, if you see post 1885, then it was a year when organized political body that is known as Indian National Congress was set up. And after setting up of Indian National Congress, slowly they have started demanding for freedom. Though this demand was not granted at one stroke by the Britishers, but from here 1885 to 1947, if you see these developments, then you can see on the various occasions and from various platforms, INC was continuously demanding for complete freedom, or that is called Purna Swaraj. So here if you see then how the demands went on and what are the chronological sequence of that, that will also help us in understanding when and where the actual demand of the constitution was there from Indian side or the people who were struggling for India's freedom. So here if you see the period from 1885 to 1947, then you can see all these three important acts which we have discussed just now, 1909, 1919 and 1935, they are nothing but the incarnation or manifestation of these demands for Purna Swaraj or complete independence. Now, historians call it freedom struggle or maybe the Purna Swaraj or maybe the sovereignty and India's independence, whatever name you use. Point here ultimately is nothing but if I relate it from the polity, then for me it was nothing but a demand for having our own constitution. So as a historian I may say I was demanding freedom, I was demanding independence. As a political thinker or maybe as a student of Indian polity and constitution, I may say that the demand was nothing but to actually have the right to make our own constitution, our own rule of law, our own supreme law of land, which would be there to govern our own people by elected government and having a democratic state. So the whole idea is nothing but what actually we have done here to get on with this. So these are certain acts and things which actually given us some hopes that we will be able to frame our constitution, but it was not so early. It came off late. Just before the independence, we got the right to frame our own constitution. When we talk about historically, then the story goes something like we have started with demanding them in various acts and other kind of developments. Apart from that, there were certain bigger level struggle. When we talk about this, then right from the World War I, a global event, then probably the civil disobedience movement, then non-cooperation movement, then quit India movement. All these important things you will study in history which actually laid the foundation for what? Getting the rights to frame our own constitution. How Britishers actually given us the right, that was also in some installment form. First they have started with the electorates, then they had given us voting rights, certain voting rights, then they had given us diarchy, that is dual government, then limited independence, then authority to make the constitution and so on, which we will see very shortly. So when we talk about that legacy part, then we can say that for our constitutional development, the most important acts are nothing but Government of India Act or three acts, 1909, 1919 and 1935. Right? Now here, as I've told you that what we have to relate or how we have to take this historical background is nothing but for framing and making the constitution. The historical part, you'll be dealing in history in more detail, but what is required for our part to understand this, that is what we are discussing. So as I've told you, here they had given us the incentives in installments, not at one go, starting from World War I to, we can say, India's Independence Act domestically, 1947. Now here, when the situations were such that they wanted the cooperation from the Indian people, or basically the Indian army, to participate in the World War I, by that time INC was matured enough. And we were saying that until unless you are not going to promise us the early date for our freedom, that is Purna Swaraj, will not be contributing in that. And looking at the developments, they promise us that let the World War get over and we'll be definitely giving you the Purna Swaraj status. However, before the World War I, as we know that they had given us the Government of India Act 1909, but again that was just nothing but awarding us the electorates and some voting rights, that too very limited. Though it resulted in their own interest, self-interest, this electorate became the communal electorate and all those things, and that led to more conflicts and continuing their policy of divide and rule. However, after this we participated in the World War I, and then after the war was over in 1918, Indian people were expecting that they will give us more rights or more independence under the ambit of Purna Swaraj. But for us, even 1919 was a setback only, because here they introduced the concept of diarchy. Now, when we say diarchy, though it was some sort of incentive as far as the Purna Swaraj is concerned, but certainly it was not the Purna Swaraj, and this they have introduced only in the provinces, not at the central level or the presidencies. So, when we talk about diarchy, what exactly the diarchy was all about? Again, in history, you'll see the more details about these things, but here for us in diarchy, actually they have divided the whole subject of administration into reserve subjects and transfer subjects. For reserve subjects, those subjects which were very important, like for example, home, finance, defense, these were kept with the Britishers only, or the governors or so-called viceroys after 1858, and transfer subjects were local subjects, maybe health, sanitation, primary education and so on, that were transferred under the Indian elected representatives. So, some sort of what we can say self-government was promised by them, but this is what we were not satisfied that, because we wanted something called Purna Swaraj, and they have actually given us some sort of administrative powers, that too at the provincial levels, not at the union level or what we call today as central level. Things went on, then India continued with domestic politics, right, which was not quite stable in the form of civil disobedience movement, and then probably the non-cooperation movement, and then probably the Quit India movement. All these things went on, but in between these, we also came across a phenomenon of Second World War, and that was a turning point for us. We already had the experience of First World War. We believed on them, we participated from their side, but in turn, what we got was not satisfying. That's why, to make it more satisfying is something, satisfaction plus sufficing, that is fair enough kind of thing. In World War II, we kept the condition, we'll participate only if you promise us to give the Purna Swaraj. And the background was developed and they passed Government of India Act 1935. Now, when we compare the Government of India Act 1935 with modern day constitution, you will find that more than 65 to 70% things in present day constitution is taken from Government of India Act 1935. So you can say they have promised a lot, but only unfortunate part is Government of India Act 1935 never came to implementation. So the conclusion is, till the independence, that is nothing but 1947, we all were ruled by the provisions which were mentioned in Government of India Act 1919. Had it been in 1935 would have been implemented, things would have changed a bit earlier for us than till 1947. After a couple of years, in 1939, we started with the Second World War, and then there, Indian political leadership insisted that we are not going to participate in this unless we are not going to be, having the assurance of getting complete independence. And for that, to break the deadlock, the British government sent a cabinet mission, popularly known as CMP. This is called Cabinet Mission Plan, to negotiate with the Indian political leadership to ensure their participation in the ongoing conflict known as Second World War, plus two more factors were there which we'll study later on. One is called Russophobia, other is called Chinese aggression. So Russophobia is nothing but the western end of the British territory was left open through Afghanistan, where they have the fear of Russian troops encroaching upon and they don't want to annoy China. So for that, the cooperation from the Indian political leadership was very much eminent for them. And our Indian leadership was also understanding the criticality of the situation. That's why we said that we will not participate until unless there is no concrete stuffs or promises made by the British government, so that we can rest assured that we'll get the objective of Purna Swaraj fulfilled. Keeping that thing in mind, the British government has set the cabinet mission plan in India and the August 1940. This is also popularly known as August Offer. So what basically August Offer was, right? It's nothing but the offer to make own constitution. How that constitution will be done? That will be done after arrival of cabinet mission plan, that was in 1946. So the chronology goes like, in 1940 they had given the offer that okay, we'll give you the right to make your own constitution, but how you are going to make the constitution, that will happen only after the end of World War II. So in 1945 we ended with the World War, and when we asked them what happened to that promise which you had made us in August offer, they said that this is what we had told you earlier, that we'll send a cabinet mission plan, which came in 1946, and they had given the approval that okay, you can have your own constitution. And that's how we started with making of our own constitution, and for that we needed a body that is called Constituent Assembly. So the permission for Constituent Assembly came from nothing but approval from the cabinet mission plan, and once they approved this body, Constituent Assembly, that was nothing but the beginning of actual drafting or framing of our Indian constitution. Is it clear? Great.